Welcome to the Keeping Everything Simple podcast, the show that tries to break down the complex world of business, leadership, and personal development. I'm your host and fellow learner, Michael Klukas, and in this week's episode, we're going to be talking about frontline workers and coffee. So, keeping everything simple, let's jump right in. Okay, so that felt good. That felt good. So this is the first ever episode of the Keeping Everything Simple podcast. And I have an idea of where I want to take it and where I want it to go. But for right now, we're going to keep it simple. So we're going to jump into a news headline that has been popping up on places like Business Insider, NPR, or not NPR, Business Insider for sure. Yahoo News, I know it was on there. It's just this idea right now that Starbucks has a new CEO. And recently, he took over the role a couple weeks earlier than planned. And I have speculations about that, but I'll get into that a bit later. So I'm going to check my notes here, and we're going to jump right into that. Okay, so the new CEO is Laxman. I'm probably going to butcher his last name. So even though he's never going to see this, I apologize in advance. Narasimhan. Yeah, something like that. I'm just going to call him Laxman or Starbucks CEO. That seems like the right move here. So he took over earlier than planned. And the reason why this is something that I actually wanted to make this whole episode about is this idea of frontline workers. So when I said coffee, if you were keeping up with that, you probably realized I was going to be talking about Starbucks. The way in which he took over was that he spent a couple, I think it was weeks or a couple months really just traveling through the entire production chain of Starbucks. So checking out the coffee roasters, and I think he went to also some of the plants in which they actually, or the farms in which they actually got the coffee. I'm not too sure about that one, but going in from the front line, being trained as a barista, going to the warehouses, the production plants, the roasting facilities, and trying to get a full picture of the entire Starbucks operation, which I thought was really cool. And it made me kind of think, why is it that there is such a big disconnect between the top C-level suite and executives and the frontline workers? And there was a couple of pieces in the article that really focused in on this idea that executives can live in a bubble where they may never ever see the impacts of their decisions, aside from on a spreadsheet or on a graph that says sales went up or sales went down, as opposed to actually getting face-to-face with their frontline workers and asking them, hey, what's been working? What's been problem points that you've noticed? What can we actually do to make things, work a bit better? And this is what prompted that discussion for me and that train of thought. So here is kind of the what behind this. So I really think of it is that if a leader loses sight of the actual people and things that move the needle of whether it's profits or progress forward, then they lose the ability to actually drive good change and good results. Kind of because the one thing that I believe any top level leader or anyone who wants to be a team leader to begin with should understand is your team is kind of your bread and butter. Now, sure, you're going to have your secret sauce, which is something that people will refer it to as. And that secret sauce is your ability to do your actual main product work that you send out to your customers, your clients, whatever it is. But the things that keep that moving forward are your team members. So I used this example in a couple of videos in the past where I'd say, what would happen to McDonald's, for example, if every single employee, so line cooks, the cashiers, just left? They didn't come to work, they didn't do anything, and there was no one to serve any of the customers that came in. I kind of think it's obvious that everything would just shut down. If no matter how, I'm not going to say it's a good burger. I feel like someone's going to come after me for that, but I'm not a big fan of McDonald's. That's the best I can say about that. I'll eat it. However, it's definitely not, A tier or anything like that. So it's this idea of the people going in to get their morning coffee, to get their breakfast, and in the afternoon to get that burger for their lunch or whatever it is, and there's no one there, McDonald's kind of takes a big hit to profits if, like, at a consistent basis, everywhere across the board, people just didn't show up or there's no one there. So that's why it matters so much that taking a big deviation away from, the general C-level suite executives and the process in which they don't step foot in a store more than to do their walkthroughs, which obviously, coming from retail, everyone will tell you it's just a matter of, oh, we've never dusted this shelf off, and we should probably move this product from the back to the front of the store because it's looking kind of bare, and we should adjust this sign that we've never bothered to touch in the entire 2 or 3 years to which I've seen it there, but they're coming, so we should do that. That happened quite a bit. I never got the fuss of it, but it happened. And so that's why I think the big deviation away from the other CEOs of large companies. So Loxman he's committing to 1 day a month and doing a half shift. And admittedly, that doesn't seem like very much, but then I also have to consider, and we have to keep in mind that he is the CEO of the 7th largest food brand in the entire world, or recognizable food brand in the entire world. That's not a small achievement, and it's also not a small company. So I got to give him some credit where credit's due, I believe, in that it didn't say in any articles that I did see that it was a temporary thing. It looked like it was going to be more of like a indefinite permanent fixture in his time as Starbucks CEO. And I think that's a really, really good idea, because in this way, he can actually connect with the employees. Now, we're going to get a bit into this idea of the union busting that Starbucks is being, taken to Congress for, but we'll get into that. So this is going back to the why I think it happened. With, what's the other guy's name? Howard Schultz. That name sounds fake. Moving on. Okay, moving on. No. I honestly, this is my speculation, and I can't say for sure. I do think that what had probably happened here, again, pure speculation, so don't quote me on this, is that because there has been alleged union busting efforts by Starbucks, with the couple hundred of stores that have been petitioning and voting to create and join unions, that at this point they figured it'd be best to get Howard out of there a little early, because he's still going to testify before Congress about, these efforts and the role in which they played in damaging Starbucks relationships with their employees, who they call partners. And this idea that they're going to actually treat them more as partners with this new CEO is very important. And there was a couple of snippets from other articles where some of the employees that were leading union efforts would say they rather that Laxman takes more time to maybe learn about union laws and labor rights. And I think that's important, and that's a good idea as well. And I think all this kind of just culminates into a bigger picture in which him taking time to both connect with frontline workers, even if it's 1 day a month. I think it should be, maybe a couple more days a month. Yet I have to, again, try to recognize that he probably still will have a lot on his plate, especially taking over the company during this time in which union efforts are going up, which I think is good. How this really comes about, though, is that core idea of if you never, and you're a top level leader, or you're a team leader but you're always away, and you never see your employees actually doing the work, and you yourself never get into the weeds of it or into the trenches of the work with them, you're missing a key opportunity, I think, to learn and to actually find those big projects, those big changes you can make that will move that needle forward and really make or break, again, the progress or profits you wish to make. And so Starbucks itself does claim to be a very like progressive facing industry or progressive facing company. And whatever your thoughts are on that, I do think that just this idea as a whole about leaders working side by side their teams is super important. Like, this is no longer the norm. And I don't know if it's actually ever been the norm. I'll have to get back to you on that. But just the overall principle that I believe, anyways, that if you say, going back to the retail example, because that's one I know very well, is if you never actually see your, say, CEO or someone, then what does it matter whenever they make a call or make a decision? Sure, you have to follow some of it, yet at the same time, for every store or every retail chain in which I've heard it from, there is often this, not insubordination, because that's a bit harsh. It's just this idea that management or higher level management, corporate management, may not understand exactly what's happening on a store level basis. And they can't, especially when stores and companies are super, super big. And changes they want to propose or things they want to make happen don't make sense for every single store. And a lot of them are guilty of using this one size fits all approach because they want to, again, increase profits, increase shareholder value, whatever it is. And they lose sight of every store is a little bit different, even if it all falls under the umbrella of one single cohesive company. And being able to look around and take an actual snapshot of the moment and of the work does, I think, create more of a back and forth dialogue that can be very helpful. And it's just not going to be easy because that means you got to face up to a lot of things you're doing wrong. Yeah, so with Locksman then coming in and kind of breathing in this breath of fresh air into the company, hopefully, a new person coming into any location, any role, can breathe new life into an existing team, an existing process, and make it take an entirely different direction than what anyone thought possible. At least this is, again, what I believe. So what are you, as maybe small business leaders or smaller team leaders, able to take away from this? And I personally think it's this idea that you should be taking a lot of that time that you have, and when it makes sense to do so, and working side by side with your team members in the trenches, in the weeds, getting into the nitty gritty. That is, that's a lot of ways of saying just work beside your team. Because honestly, if you lose touch with the skills that got you into that role in the first place, if you went through a frontline process up, or if you're coming in from the outside as like maybe an external hire or an external leader, then you're going to learn the fastest by seeing where every single pain point is firsthand and experiencing it and trying to understand maybe why a certain solution is being offered up that you may not have agreed with from, a general standpoint, but then after going through the same experience and being put in the same position as the team members who deal with that problem, you realize, oh, wait a minute, this does make a lot of sense. And for right now, I can use my example of my current role as in being in manufacturing, is that there is a lot of miscommunication between top down or from the top leadership because no one is really ever on the same page. And I will admit, it is super, super annoying. I don't think my boss is ever going to see this, so I'm just going to keep talking. Oh, I hope he doesn't. But no, it really is just super, super annoying to then have to say one leader tells you to keep working just as you should, and then someone else comes in and says, oh, we're changing up everything. Stop what you're doing. And then another person comes in and says, oh, by the way, I need you to keep working on this. And suddenly you have 3 competing messages at minimum. And then by the end of the day, you're thinking to yourself, what was I actually supposed to do here? I don't know. it would have been great to have some clarity and cohesion and actual sensible directions that make the needle move forward. Where if you have to stop every couple of minutes because someone's bringing up a new thing you have to do, you're not going to be as productive as you want to be, and that's not your fault. It's not. So, this is what I honestly think that here's some like challenges and a couple things that I want you to take away from this. So, challenge number 1, as a leader or as an external hire who's coming into a lead role, is actually have these one-on-ones with your team members and figure out what their pain points are, because again, one size fits all does not really ever work. At least it works in varying circumstances. I really don't want to use like a definitive, because only a Sith deals in absolutes. Moving on. But then from there, moving from one-on-ones to then moving to a whole team conversation, being able to ask your team as a whole, because you have now a little bit of background from the one-on-ones, and then having the whole team say, okay, as a group, what's a big pain point? Because having cohesion among what you realize is going to be good. And then number 3 is that you do take time to, again, work alongside your team. You take time to, going back to retail example, if you have never cashiered before, you spend time learning how to cashier. If you've never stocked the shelves, or you have before, but this is a new company, you stock the shelves. You try it. You learn it. You have to get into it so that way you know firsthand, because that's something that I cannot emphasize enough, and I don't think I've emphasized enough throughout the entirety of this podcast episode, is having that firsthand experience will help you learn so much quicker. Even if you are an auditory learner or you prefer to read things, you have to be able to be there in person, be present with the work, and try it out. See where you run into hiccups and where you run into errors, because that will give you the best crash course that you can get anywhere. And I do think what's kind of funny about this is the fact that I chose to cover this article because I think it highlighted the point pretty well of, frontline workers are vital to any company whatsoever. No matter how big or small it is, your frontline workers matter. So you want to treat them well. And the piece that made me laugh about this is the fact that I don't even drink coffee. Like, I've gone to Starbucks, sure, but it's never for coffee, not even for their food. It's again going back to this idea for me personally that, your frontline workers, your service workers, however you want to look at it, they make or break the whole experience. And yeah, sure, if I go to Starbucks, which again is rare, then I'll get something like a refresher or a smoothie or hot chocolate. Hot chocolate's always good too. Because that's always, that's good for me. And this is where the ability to look at a different store or different groups within the store is, I think, kind of important, because say one struggling store that doesn't have the resources to meet demand and all the workers are burnt out and no one's checked in on them in over 6 months, they're probably not going to give the same level of customer service or the same level of, effort even to compared to like a store that has, fully staffed all the time, which I don't know how often that is. And this is just speaking from my own experience in retail. Don't know how often that's going to happen. But they have resources available. The leader's present. The store is constantly checked in on. They have, again, resources available, and they have a continual system of communication that allows them to say, oh, cool, we need more of product A. There's a lot of people asking for product C, and they're able to meet demand, and they feel confident, prepared, and actually ready and understood to give more, do more, and be of more service. So, as a whole, I just want you guys to take that away. And I'm pretty sure at this point now it's a little bit annoying, but get into the weeds, work with your team, and really try to understand where they're coming from, because you will be able to do so much more and they will be able to do so much more when that effort is taken. All right, that's it. That's all I got. Okay, so that was the first episode of the Keeping Everything Simple podcast. And again, I'm just learning as long with you guys. So I really want to be able to have conversations with people through different industries, seeing how they're navigating their life, their business, and their personal development. Because if you're not growing, you're dying. And you should always be working to push yourself. So let me know in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to this on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, I don't know. Be sure to leave me a review. That helps out so much. And honestly, let me know what you guys want to hear about next as well. I got a couple ideas in mind that I'm floating around for stories I want to talk about or big conversations I want to have. But let me know what you guys want as well, because again, I'm learning just as much as you guys are, and I'm excited to see where this goes. So keeping it simple, have an amazing day, you amazing people, and I will see you all next time.